The last time I made this kind of video, I took a look back at my overall top 10 games of all time. And for those of you who have seen it, you may have noticed that I broke my rules about not including multiple games from any given series. I included 2 Sonic the Hedgehog games in it. And that's because Sonic is pretty integral to my inner being. Being a 90s kid, born in the same year that Sonic himself was also dropped into this world, I have felt like I have always been aware of his existence and was lucky enough to start playing these games at such a young age. And as I said in the last video, I consider Sonic games, when done right, to be the cream of the crop when it comes to the genre of platformers. So I'm incredibly excited to present to you, out of all the Sonic games that have ever been officially published, my top 10 selection of games that I feel do indeed get the concept of Sonic the Hedgehog so right. So grab yourself a chili dog or curry flavoured popcorn while I take you on a journey back in time. Number 10. Have you ever played any of the 8-bit Sonic games? These were my entry point into the series as far back as I can remember. One of my earliest memories is the fear and dread associated with seeing Sky-based Zone from Sonic 1 on the Master System paused and left flickering on the television screen, as leaving the game paused and left on was the only way of saving back then. But as much as I loved exploring 8-bit Sonic 1 and discovering all of its hidden 1-ups and how to collect the emeralds, this isn't the game I will be talking about. It should come as no surprise that 8-bit Sonic 2 is getting an entry on this list. When I was a kid, this was the game I was more attached to. It might have had something to do with the fact that I had this with a cart and its box and manual, while Sonic 1 was simply built into my Master System 2. I probably felt more of a sense of ownership of the game in this way, as I could also read its manual, and the game also showed a cute sidekick in miles per hour on the box, and its splash screens, so I was probably attracted to the idea of having a buddy this time too. I was also more attracted to its difficulty, which even on the Master System version, which is considered the easiest version, was still incredibly punishing for such a young gamer. I know that Green Hills Zone Act 3 was always my brick wall in my preschool days, as I'd literally hit that brick wall off those springs every single time and get a game over. And those are my childhood memories of the game. We got rid of our Master System and replaced it with a Saturn, and then suddenly we had no Sega consoles at all for a while, until I became a young teenager, had an income, and started getting back into Sonic again via PC games and eventually collecting Sonic games on their actual hardware. I got myself a Master System again and sat down with Sonic 2 one night to soak in all the magic again, and I realised why this game was also so memorable to me. I love how this is still one of the very few Sonic games that dares to open in a level theme that isn't referencing the Green Hill archetype. Sonic games that open in this way tend to be much beloved by the community. The music is absolutely incredible. These are 8-bit compositions that really take advantage of the hardware that they play on. There are other people out there who might be able to explain why these songs sound so good, but all I can do is geek out about all that jazz. I will say that these compositions sound so good on their original hardware that finding really good remixes of them that match my standards has been a very long and deep journey of digging into YouTube's archives. The visuals are incredible too. The colours just pop, and the contrast makes me want to study colour theory to understand why. Even when adapting these tiles for my remake, I have barely made any alterations from the original colour palette. Sega's 8-bit machines were certainly capable consoles compared to what I've seen from its contemporaries. Both versions of Sonic 1 had one zone where the background was different across all 3 acts, and this game evolves that trend further. Sky High Zone has 3 different backgrounds across its acts, and Aqua Lake takes us inside some sunken underwater ruins. These also happen to be, visually, my favourite levels in the game. I have always been disappointed how the 16-bit version of Sonic 2 didn't also evolve this trend. Good thing that Sonic 3 picked up the slack. And boy, is it still a challenge. Finding out how to collect the Chaos Emeralds is very rewarding, as well as exploring the levels for every single ring and 1-up that are littered throughout. Hang on to your 1-ups because you're gonna need them for the trial and error that is Green Hills. I find the first 2 acts to be a very rewarding run through a summer's breeze, a calm before the storm of Act 3, but I finally figured it out and I could carry on. Aqua Lake introduced the concept of maze-like level design, which pops up more often in the finale of the game. I love how Gimmick Mountain also dares to be different. Not many Sonic levels place the end goal to the left. I love that subversion of expectation, and it's a concept I love to experiment with today. Scrambled Egg is arguably the first Sonic level with a virtual aesthetic, and its music slaps. Figuring out those pipe mazes was always a one-up draining challenge. I remember the night I finally achieved what had always been impossible in my household. Defeating Silver Sonic and seeing that last Chaos Emerald spawn. I could finally visit the mysterious Crystal Egg Zone, only alluded to on the box and manual. I had never seen this place before. I didn't know what to expect, and my expectations have been forged by seeing the final zones of countless other Sonic games, which are usually a cold, metallic and dystopian take on a technological future. Words can't describe the magic of hearing the music in combination with seeing the visuals of Crystal Egg Zone. And instead of spoiling the planned finale of my remake, I want to ask you, what is your interpretation of this level? Many believe it to be a winter level simply because of its musical connection to Beta Ice Cap from Sonic 3, but I don't believe this to be the case. Sonic CD takes musical cues from 8-bit Sonic 2, even when the zone is completely unrelated to the one where the motif came from. I want to hear the interpretations that dare to be different. I wonder if anybody gets the same vibe that I do. I also want to lightly touch upon the bosses of this game. I think they're pretty neat. The master robots all have memorable designs, and their fights are a little more involved in this game, requiring you to think fast and learn attack patterns, as there are no rings for these fights. No shields or checkpoints either. It was always my headcanon that Eggman was testing out various animal robot designs against Sonic, which led to the refinement of Metal Sonic himself, but that's just a theory. I could continue to gush over this game and reveal much of the trivia that I have memorized about it, but I'm gonna call it there and pour the rest of that energy into the remake that I have always dreamt of. If you haven't played this game, then I ask you, are you up to it? And if you already love this game on the Master System, then I highly recommend giving the Game Gear version another shot. It's like a hard mode DLC with additional content. Number 9.
Ready, set, go!
I have previously mentioned how I had access to a PC in the late 90s and early 2000s, and until the release of the Sonic & Knuckles collection, my go-to PC game was always Sonic R. I never got to experience it on the Saturn, alongside Sonic 3D, Flicky's Island, so I was so glad that they were released on PC in my territory on those explosive discs.
It's explosive.
At first glance, this seems like a fairly simple and short game, lacking in content and balance. Those aren't exactly wrong, but I feel like Sonic R has been mostly sold short by those who have reviewed it. Thanks to the childhood mentality of playing the few games I own to absolute death, I can report that Sonic R has a lot of depth that goes underappreciated. Let's start with the base character selection. We have Sonic, Tails, Knuckles and Amy. A lot of criticism is levered towards this game for its lack of balance. A lot of players will point to Sonic being the best character simply because he is the fastest, and that the game lacks balance. But Tails has incredibly fast acceleration, and he can fly on a fixed axis for a limited time, skipping over sections of the level design that Sonic would not normally be able to achieve. The same goes for Knuckles, who is more well-rounded stats-wise and can glide over the same obstacles, though his altitude will decrease. Amy is very unique, and in line with her original character, she needs a tool to be able to keep up with the other characters, and her car is a very cute and useful tool. First impressions with this vehicle aren't good. It's incredibly slow, and she has no jump, but it can drive on the water without losing speed, unlike the others who all sink and slow to a crawl. She can make use of her boost to send her to incredible speeds, at the cost of not being able to handle well while using it. Use these advantages strategically to take shortcuts and get the edge over the boys. You are able to come in first place with any character, and if you are able to master them all, then I salute you. Speaking of shortcuts, let's talk about the track design itself. Again, on first glance, looking at this paltry selection of tracks might be initially disappointing, and seeing these on-screen maps may seem confusing. But my recommendation is to just ignore them and explore these vast stages at your own leisure. The game features additional modes that let you get more familiar with the level design without the limitations of time that racing brings to the table. Check out the time attack modes and see what you can do on your own, and spend as much time as you like within any of the 5 levels. You can also do backwards time attacks, a testament to the open level design preventing softlock situations and being fully backtrackable. Get really familiar with every nook and cranny with the balloon mode, where you find 5 randomly placed balloons, or play tag with the other characters. Admittedly, this latter mode isn't the best. The AI stop moving when they get outside a certain distance and aren't that smart. It could have been fun with multiplayer. Alas, this is not the case for some reason. Another huge motivation for me to keep coming back to this game, beyond the other modes, was the teaser that was always there on the character select screen and the save screen. This game has additional characters to unlock, and the Chaos Emeralds are here? And what are these coins on the HUD that I sometimes find on the track? I had to find out how to unlock all this stuff, and it's not really that hard to discover how to do these things. When racing, you'll notice these doors with numbers on top of them, blocking access to certain areas. It's only natural to assume that these doors open when collecting the same number of rings. If you are curious enough to try this, you'll often be rewarded with either a shortcut, a coin, or a Chaos Emerald. If you find one of these emeralds, you must finish in first place, or the game will take it away from you during the results. You usually have to go out your way to collect these, so to be able to take the longer path, and then be able to catch up to first place, rewards a player's knowledge of the level design. Unlocking all of the Chaos Emeralds grants the player access to Super Sonic, who, admittedly, is pretty broken with his stats, but I consider him a cool bonus unlockable, as getting all the emeralds is technically the hardest challenge in the game. The other characters are unlocked by collecting all 5 coins hidden within any base level, and rewards the player's knowledge of every branching path and shortcut. The finish requirements are a lot less strict with the coins, so I consider this the easiest challenge of the game. If you manage to finish within the top 3 with all 5 coins, you will be challenged to a 1v1 against one of the unlockable characters. Metal Sonic for Resort Island, Tails Doll for Radical City, Egg Robo for Regal Ruins, and Metal Knuckles for Reactive Factory. While facing these characters, you might even notice how they will take some shortcuts you may have never considered. I know that these bots taught me a thing or two. We all know Metal Sonic, and being able to play as an Egg Robo from Sonic and Knuckles was also very nice, but I have always appreciated the designs from Metal Knuckles and Tails Doll. I think it's a real shame that they are pretty much exclusively tied to this game alone. If you go out your way to experience all of the content that this game has to offer, rather than solely focusing on the racing aspect, playing it once and then never again, then you will find that you've actually gotten way more time and value out of the game than you had have initially expected. A lot of people lament how the Saturn never really got a 3D Sonic game, but it was pointed out to me by Subsonic Sparkle that the maps in this game were actually designed by Sonic Team. And when you see all the depth and complexity in the mix, then it makes perfect sense. The Saturn did get a 3D Sonic in Sonic R, and it was an incredible attempt to adapt the design philosophies of the 2D series for a racing game. I think this is one of those underrated Sonic games that deserves a second chance, be it by replaying the PC abandonware version or hoping for a true sequel. Another underrated aspect of this game, I feel, is its soundtrack. People often say that these lyrics are cheesy and that they prefer to play the game with the vocals off. It's actually pretty cool that the game has this feature, but I don't feel the need. It might just be because I'm a 90s kid, but these songs are just my jam.
Jello. No. Jelly. Jelly.
I want some jam.
Jelly.
The beautiful and atmospheric compositions that fit each level vibe, masterfully composed by Richard Jacks, complemented by piano and vocals that take me back to the golden age of 90s dance music. TJ Davis's voice is a beautiful and powerful one that motivated me to keep on going through the hard times of my childhood. Whether I was at the gym training for the armed forces, running in the field, or doing my paper round in the pouring rain, you can be guaranteed that I was listening to these songs on my CD Walkman. Pretty cool how these PC CD-ROMs let you do that. So I hope you understand why I think so highly of Sonic R. I do recommend you give it a fair shot. It is still easily accessible today. And if you're hungry for more, do check out the fan sequel, Sonic Battle R, another on-foot racer, albeit with adventure physics, featuring the original game's tracks, along with plenty of others from Sonic's history, and online play. Number 8. The Sonic Advance trilogy is much beloved by those who grew up with it, including myself. I grew up playing with them in my teens on my Game Boy Advance and Nintendo DS. All three games have incredible sprite animations, music, and levels that have the feel of the Sonic Team classics, while taking full advantage of the Game Boy Advance hardware. But which one is my favourite? Well, I can tell you that Sonic Advance 3 is my least favourite. Even though it makes a strong first impression, with Route 99 breaking the Green Hill rule for the first level, before throwing an incredibly memorable remix of it for the second level, Sunset Hill is certainly one of my favourite levels ever. The opening of Advance 3 offers speed and spectacle never seen before or since on the Game Boy Advance, and the overall game is brimming with content, from 4-act zones, side minigame levels, and of course, the character combo mechanic evolving Sonic further than any game before. However, I feel like Advance 3 becomes a bit of a chore after these first two zones, with a punishing finale at Chaos Angel, some questionable boss fights that don't really consider the limited screen space, the rise of punishing instant death hazards that Dimps have become pretty infamous for, and an odd change in physics compared to the prior Advance games that nobody seems to bring up in their reviews. The music only really works in this game too. I find it a little too grating to listen to in isolation. I admire its ambition though, and pairing any character with Amy at least gives me my favourite aspect of Advance 1 to play with. I can see how this game is designed around those abilities, and it's pretty fun to find out what you can and can't do. What's your favourite pairing? Now, trying to decide between the other two games was incredibly hard for me. For the longest time, I always thought that Sonic Advance 1 was the superior game to 2. I even ranked it as so in my 2D Sonic tier list stream. I said at the time that I prefer how faithful Advance is to the 16-bit originals, and that's that. But after recently replaying them both, I felt incredible conflict. Advance 1, I do have a lot of nostalgia for. It was one of my first Game Boy Advance games. I was very impressed with it at the time, and I remain to be to this day. Some fans claim this to be the real Sonic 4, and I have thought about this concept too. However, this game does not do enough to surpass Sonic 3 and Knuckles. The game is incredibly short, and doesn't have a boss fight at the end of every act. To me, this feels like a step between Sonic 2 and Sonic 3, as it keeps the 2-act structure, with the boss at the end of Act 2, while providing a remix of the music for Act 2. I wished the original Sonic 2 did that too. They were wise to name it Sonic Advance rather than Sonic 4 or something evocative of that. It's not revolutionary or game-changing, it's simply Sonic on the Game Boy Advance. I would like to take note of these boss fights though. They're rather unique for 2D Sonic bosses, in that their difficulty incrementally increases for each hit point they lose. This is a pretty smart way to make Sonic boss fights more dynamic, and I do not recall seeing this in many other games. I like the way Dimps tend to approach Sonic bosses. Advance 2, I also have a lot of nostalgia for. I just forgot about it. When I recently replayed it, I had my Madeline moment, and suddenly remembered that Advance 2 was my go-to bus journey game, and it really stands on its own, daring to take 2D Sonic in a new direction that focuses on the highest speed spectacle and action with new aerial tricks. Advance 2 has so much of what I enjoy about the Sonic Rush series. You could just let the game sort of play itself and you'll still have a blast, though you'll come out of it feeling a little underwhelmed. Or you can use your knowledge of the level design, enemy and object placement to skip over sections that you previously only held right in. This game is a pretty fun playground to break the sound barrier and maintain momentum in. I love to challenge myself to keep my after images maintained for as long as possible. Advance 2 also boasts some creative and unique level themes that aren't trying to safely retread past themes. Of course, the game starts in Leaf Forest, which yes, is a Green Hill clone, but an oddly even more abstract one. I dig the checkered background and the way the foreground tiles are rendered. Hot Crater is a fresh take on a second zone, combining metallic structures with a blisteringly hot volcano. I love the heat wave background effect. Music Plant is my favourite level from the entire trilogy, with its pink colour scheme, impressive parallax and level design that goes all in on the music theme. Ice Paradise I have additional nostalgia for thanks to Ultimate Flash Sonic being my true introduction to this level. It's nice how in the actual game we see the spotlight effect that had previously wowed me for a brief moment in the first game's secret base zone before never being seen again. However, at Sky Canyon, the difficulty kicks up a notch, as it rightly should for the finale. This level has bottomless pits galore, another instant death hazard that dimps have become synonymous with. It's not really that bad if you pay attention, but there are certainly some trial and error beginner traps that I understand are a turn off for a lot of players. The difficulty never really lets up after this. Techno Base is another cool example of a digital Sonic level, and is visually one of the most spectacular zones in the game, though to its detriment. The way the background warps and changes colour is cool to look at on its own, but in motion, combined with the intentional flickering of some other stage objects, makes for a visually messy zone. And then Egg Utopia is your usual safe space final level. I love the way the ceiling of the indoor background scrolls in this fake 3D way. The bosses are all pretty memorable too, taking the concept of an auto-running boss that first appeared in Sonic & Knuckles' Mushroom Hill and doing as much as they can with it. For me, these bosses hit that sweet spot of providing the right difficulty for the first attempts, while being easy to clear for those who have mastered the controls. I also appreciate how Dimps gave these bosses pinch modes. At 2 or 4 remaining HP, these bosses will get harder before they give in, changing the speed of their attack pattern, while the music changes to a more suitable Allegro mode. And the music of Advance 2 also stands on its own. It's got more aggression, style and attitude than Advance 1's OST, and further aids the feeling of speed that the game provides. I think this is my favourite OST in the Advance trilogy. I honestly was going to play Sonic Advance 2 in this spot, however, I fell back down to earth and realised that I still have issues with it. My biggest issue is that I have never really been able to finish it. Those who have played it will agree that the requirement to find all 7 special rings in a level to enter special stages is pretty brutal. I do remember it was pretty fun to explore and find out where they were, but Sonic games are inherently fun to explore. I only ever managed to enter special stage 1 and 4, and my favourite character from the first game is locked behind the emeralds. Apparently she controls nothing like she did in Advance 1, so I don't really care that much. This, in combination with its difficulty spike, prevents Sonic Advance 2 from taking the crown, so I have circled back round to believe in Sonic Advance 1 to be my favourite. But why? Well, besides the fact that the special stage requirement is fair and achievable, it's for one very big reason alone. I already mentioned her, Amy Rose. Amy Rose in Sonic Advance is so special to me. Back when I had this game, she was my go-to character. The way Amy controls in the first game provides a harder hard mode than the one that was previously reserved for Knuckles' story in Sonic 3. My favourite way to play Sonic Advance has always been using Amy to try and hold on to as many rings as possible, and using her moveset to explore the levels with caution. She has the cutest animations, her expressiveness makes her a lot of fun to interact with these environments, and my playstyle extends the adventure to something that I can chew on a bit more. I love how much depth Amy has here. Did you know that if you hit a spring with her hammer, you'll be bounced much higher? Or that you can do higher jumps by holding down and pressing B? Or that she can do a continuous hammer spin if you press B and down while falling that wrecks certain bosses? Or that she can do a little slide and tackle after her hop? What at first glance may seem like big disadvantages and a turn off for a lot of players, become huge advantages when used right. Amy's standard hammer attack has a huge hitbox that makes certain bosses easier. Amy's playstyle is what makes this game so special to me, and I have always been disappointed by the fact that since this game, and in every single subsequent appearance, she has had a completely different moveset. Why won't Sonic Team ever go back to this playstyle? I think that it is bold and brave and very fitting for Amy's character. And I'll take this over Adventure Amy any day. Why is Sonic Team retroactively going back to the classic formula, adding Amy as a playable character and making her arguably better than Sonic? To me this does not make sense and doesn't sit right. Amy has always been just a normal girl who has a normal life. She needed rescuing in her debut, and when they reintroduced her in Adventure, they made sure to keep her as a normal girl with a normal life. She did gain a hammer though, a hammer that became a part of her character because she needed a weapon in a fighting game. and in Adventure she proved she was capable of growth and became a hero in her own right. Giving Amy the hard mode of Sonic Advance 1 feels in line with how I had always experienced Amy. She just can't keep up with the boys in the same way when it comes to speed, but she does have her smarts and her special tools available to her, and can reach heights and kick ass in ways that the boys can only dream of. Amy really does make this game one of the greatest Sonic games of all time for me, and I have always been disappointed by playing as Amy in Sonic games since. Unless it's Sonic Advance 3, she's just been another Sonic clone with minimal differences, or even jarring advantages, and I'm all for character growth. You know, character can become stronger and more able. I quite like what they did with her in Sonic Frontiers as DLC, but I was rather disappointed by her playstyles in Sonic Superstars and Origins. Maybe I'm just an old fuddy-duddy who doesn't like change, but I really miss this Amy playstyle. Where else am I going to go for this kinda hard mode? Unless Sonic Team ever revisits it, I guess I'll just have to continue playing my favourite Sonic Advance game. Number 7. Knuckles Chaotix always used to be one of those games that I was afraid of approaching and kept my distance from. In the early days of emulation, it was difficult to run, so I never played it on PC when I was young and forever assumed that it was a difficult to emulate game. And when I was a console collector, one of the few games I actually lacked was Chaotix, because look at these prices. I always wanted to try the game though and see what I was missing out on, but I also trusted the word of the Sonic community and assumed that this game just wasn't worth my time. And I had a mentality that I shouldn't really be emulating a game unless I have previously owned it. Those reasons kept me from this game until last year, 2023, when Sega missed their opportunity to put the game in Origins Plus. I started to see a little more interest and discussions surrounding the game, and even watched some live streams of it. And with the rise of YouTubers telling me that it's okay to pirate games, especially ones that aren't being sold and preserved, I finally decided to play it for the first time on a live stream. Now, before I go any further, when I play games these days, how do I put this? Oh, I'll let the official Sonic social media account say it for me. This is me. I have my reasons. It helps my mind focus. It provides temporary pain and depression relief. It helps with creativity and is a good reward mechanism for being productive. It's really nice to feel chilled out and have a mind that is quiet enough to open up to new ideas. And it's ironic, because I was raised by a Mormon family. I grew up believing that kind of thing to be a sin. I proudly voiced my opposition to it when I was a young adult. A young adult who used to drink himself to sleep on the sofa most nights, and whose outspoken and annoying tendencies led to a lonely life, which in turn led to a very bitter and nihilistic, close-minded person who was difficult to get on with. I had a cold steel heart. I was lucky enough though to have a small number of friends who saw past that and saw a happy and joyful side to me. And you know what these incredibly chill people had in common? So as I aged, and after many failed attempts to cure my depression with antidepressants and therapy, I started to explore my own psychology to try and understand what was wrong and what science can do to help me. And thanks to the rise in research in mental health and psychedelics and the people who were around me at the time, I naturally ended up giving it a try for myself. And that leads me back to where I started. Unfortunately, I still suffer from depression, so I do what I do to keep the dark clouds away. I'm not sure, given my environment, that depression will ever truly be cured, but science still suggests one potential cure. I have always been fascinated by how research into psilocybin suggests that people with depression can have out-of-body experiences that can change their perspectives on life. I had always longed to have that kind of experience, but I never really did. I think I was scared. After all, everybody who talks about this stuff here on YouTube warns that it is not for everybody. You get to see the world how it really is and see every side of yourself, and the brain can struggle to comprehend this chaos. And it's recommended that you have a guide. And I had been alone for so long that I decided to play it safe. Now, what was I supposed to be talking about? Oh yeah, nobody warned me about just how psychedelic Knuckles Chaotix is. I remember my first stream of it very well. Thanks to my mental state when I play games, I was able to soak in so much from that experience, and thanks to how brilliantly vibrant, colourful and surreal this game's graphics are, I consider this game to be a delightfully trippy and metaphysical experience. To this day, I have never seen a game that uses colours and geometric shapes so masterfully. There are so many little touches here and there where the developers are flexing what the 32X was capable of, from the dynamically changing colour palettes to the little bits of polygonal 3D that appear throughout, and from the sprite scaling to the trippy effect used to transition from place to place. These touches make the game feel like a lucid dream, a hallucination. I remember getting to the boss of Marina Madness for the first time and just marvelling at the rotating 3D diamond shape. At that very moment, it genuinely felt like the shape was coming out of my screen. It felt so real and unlocked memories of these strange dreams I had as a child. When I Google the term geometric shape nightmares, not much comes up. I've always been drawn to this Reddit post where somebody is explaining exactly what I remember from my childhood. I used to have dreams where I saw colours and shapes, and certain colours and shapes would induce different feelings. One of the most common and powerful sequences I still remember was dreaming of a dark beige coloured background, following a straight and smooth line, flowing calmly like water, until a giant circle rolls from the left and everything turns red, and I felt a powerful sensation of dread. I never really knew what this meant, and why I don't have these dreams anymore. Whenever Eggman appears in Knuckles Chaotix, he is usually accompanied by music and visuals that induce this exact feeling of dread from my nightmares. That led me down a rabbit hole of researching different ways in which humans are capable of hallucinating geometric shapes. It also probably triggered the start of my psychosis, as I became afraid of sleeping for a short while, but my research wasn't all scary feelings of dread. My research also led me to something else. N-dimethyltryptamine, or DMT, is another psychedelic. It has the same effects as psilocybin, but the effects take hold much faster. For this reason, it was known as the businessman's trip. It is capable of producing vivid projections of mystical experiences, feelings of euphoria, and hallucinations of geometric forms. Not only does this sound a lot like the dreams I had as a kid, but it is also how I describe Knuckles Chaotix. So during my psychosis, I decided to turn out the lights, hook up my speaker system and experience Chaotix late at night in my midnight greenhouse. To find meaning, I started by spending 20 minutes in the tutorial area, vibing with the dreamlike visuals and music. I wish I had this game as a kid. When you master the tutorial, you get a message saying that you're cool. I think that one's character selection, of which the possibilities are quite vast, might say a lot about one's personality. I am always drawn to Mighty in this game. He is the closest resembling Sonic, and I love his wall jump ability. I might pick Mighty because I aspire to be as much like Sonic as possible, and then for some reason, I like to have my partner character be Bomb. When I play as these two characters, I feel like I am on an adventure with my little brother. Or could the similar colour palettes represent me guiding my younger self, being the good mentor that I never had growing up? Bomb could represent the negative side of my personality, an explosive little force of emotional anger, quick to explode and hurt others around him. I love how the single-player Chaotix experience encapsulates the push and pull between two different sides of the same person. To play this game well, you must learn how to use the tether mechanic and your partner to reach speeds and heights never before seen in the Sonic series at that point. Learn how to balance the two sides of yourself. Rather than trying to run away from it, you will become more capable and achieve and feel more surging power than you had previously expected. And you gotta start this journey soon, as the endless cycle of time's arrow is forever looming, never ending, and yours won't last forever. And if we fail to understand what all of life's chaos means, then dark days are coming. The sparkling dream will become a crystal nightmare. Life is chaos. Life is all about going round and round in circles endlessly until we find a way to break that cycle ourselves. We gotta support and understand ourselves if we ever want to be happy and consider supporting somebody else, because this game also has multiplayer. I'd love to try the song and dance with another person one day, but I still need a little more time to become better at Chaotix myself. And you don't need me to tell you how magical the soundtrack is, or how vast and full of secrets the levels are, or just how many levels there are in total. This is certainly one meaty and infinitely replayable game. It's crazy just how much has been packed into this game, and it's crazy just how accessible this game is, given its reputation. This is the first Sonic game to completely ditch lives, and to actually fail a stage is completely at the fault of a player's impatience, as your partner character acts as a shield when you have less than one ring. Little touches have been added here and there to make this a game that anybody can approach. Passable walls become transparent when you pass through them. There's a great tutorial that shows your inputs on screen, customizable controls, there are no bottomless pits, the sound test shows you how to play each song on a keyboard, and the ability to choose your combo and have a random stage play with differences depending on the time of day makes this one of the most diverse games I have ever played. As a surrealist myself, Chaotix speaks a lot to me, and I'm glad that I finally got to experience it. I no longer feel the need to seek out an out-of-body experience, because Knuckles Chaotix is an artistic representation of that very experience. I came out of my psychosis with a new perspective on life, a realization that I cannot have the good without the bad, and that depression is a part of it that I have to accept. It's just another day, keep walking, but don't forget to take a nap. I have learned how to pick myself up, and I know what I must do with my life before the sun sets upon this horizon. It's a shame that the original game comes off feeling a little unfinished. There are backgrounds that I wish had better parallax scrolling, there are performance issues making for an unstable experience, and plenty of visual glitches that personally don't offend me that much, as glitches are something you may know I am equally fascinated by. But if I think about the fact that this game is a little unfinished, it just adds to the overall poetry of the game for me. Aren't we all just a little unfinished? Understandably, it was rushed to meet a deadline by a development team of geniuses whom I suspected were also taking the businessman's trip. I think it's a miracle that the game came out so well, with everything it has to offer. This game really needs the same treatment that Sonic CD got, a widescreen remake that runs at 60 FPS with all of its secrets and gameplay ideas intact, and maybe add some more characters, and the ability to play as both Heavy and Bomb, which I have tried in some ROM hacks and is a pretty challenging gameplay style. I know Sega have considered re-releasing this in the past, but are probably avoiding it nowadays because they don't see the demand from the fans, and only see the many negative reviews that have been made. But I love this game. This game feels like a spiritual successor to Sonic CD in many ways and deserves to be preserved. I also see those who also love this game. If you want to learn how to get the most out of the tether mechanic, watch this video from Pariah695. Even T. Lopes and Christian Whitehead have expressed their love for Chaotix. Now I see all the little nods Mania makes to it, and Mania's theme is straight up just the main melody of Amazing Arena. They even named their development studio Evening Star. I hope that one day they'll join forces with Sega again and give this game the love it's always deserved, and more people get to experience the pure electronic euphoria that is Chaotix. Number 6. I remember when Sonic Unleashed was first announced. It was actually leaked first via a bunch of marketing materials showing the werehog. I remember how nervous the fan base was at the time, until the first official trailer dropped. I remember watching them on early YouTube's video format, and I remember the hype. It was even nominated for a One to Watch award at the 2007 Golden Joystick Awards, and I remember playing it not long after release on my Nintendo Wii. As a Sonic fan who owned Nintendo consoles, I didn't really feel the dark age as badly as other fans did. Thanks to missing out on Sonic 06, I had a whale of a time with my GameCube 15th anniversary title, Sonic Riders, and I was impressed with Sonic and the Secret Rings for my Wii. So of course, I ended up having a good time with Sonic Unleashed, as the fans have come to call it, but I wasn't blown away or anything. I thought it was great during the daytime, but I thought that the werehog was a bit simple and dragged out far too long, especially towards the end of the game. I would only really replay the daytime levels. I was aware that I was missing out on a superior version of the game in the HD version, but it would be a long time before I got to properly enjoy it. I remember trying a PS3 demo of the game when I had that console, and I even tried to play the full game on it, but I don't know if it was just me, or if the PS3 version is genuinely more unstable, buggy and unresponsive than the 360 counterpart, but I wasn't feeling it, and wrote off the HD version as worse than the Wii version. But the urge to try it on the 360 remained buried deep at the back of my mind. I think it was mostly thanks to the Sonic community, who had either made all of the HD levels playable in the PC version of Generations using the Unleashed project, or the rising YouTubers telling me that this game is actually incredible. But it would be a while until I got to try it on an Xbox. Microsoft's consoles had never really appealed to me, and I only started caring when it became my quest to collect every Sonic game for every system ever. I finally got to play Unleashed on a 360 in 2016, and when I did, I was enamored. The graphics, the controls, the werehog, everything clicked for the first time, and to experience the full fat version of Unleashed during a severe period of drought and melancholy for the Sonic fanbase must have elevated my experience further. For the first time in a long time, it felt like I was playing a AAA Sonic game with effort and budget and scope. I have always thought that they should have kept the Japanese name of Sonic World Adventure for the Western release. The game really does deliver on that promise. The name Unleashed also fits, and it's more in line with the hint of edge that Sonic fans came to expect from that era, and I'll talk more about that theming in a short while, because you don't really need me to tell you how gorgeous and well this art style is aged. We all know that the music is one of the most varied and impressive soundtracks in the series. I had the physical OST and it had 3 discs. We all know that the daytime Sonic stages are some of, if not the best and most expansive boost levels ever to have graced a 3D Sonic game. We all know that the opening cinematic is probably the best Sonic cutscene ever. But then for the rest of the game, we all know that opinions from here on out are pretty mixed. So I am going to talk about some of the more controversial aspects of the game and provide my opinion based on my own experiences. Let's start with the story. Most agree that the story is rather good, but there are some little issues, and these issues go back to my first experience on the Wii 2. The drastic change in tone can be felt in a lot of scenes. It's an effect I can only describe as the Sonic Colors effect. Some of these scenes seem to be laying the groundwork for the Saturday morning cartoon for kids tone that the series would make the focus of future games. A lot of these scenes can send shivers down my spine. Chip comes across as very annoying early on, and his English voice actor does him no favours. There's also this scene with Tails, where he cowers before some dark Gaia creatures, very reminiscent of how he'd respond to chaos and forces, but this aspect at least can be fixed with some good old headcanon. It's always been my belief that Unleashed takes place before even the adventure games. The details that suggest to me that this is the case include the design of the tornado being very much the classic one, the lack of other characters like Knuckles or Shadow in the plot, and just the fact that this works very much as a standalone game, with no major connections to any other game. Otherwise, I do like this game's story. The important takeaway is that Sonic still very much feels like my Sonic. Eggman feels like a genuine threat, despite his occasional goofiness. We go on a grand adventure around the world with Chip as he remembers who he is. He also grows on me by the end, and the stakes get higher as the journey goes on. One of my favourite exchanges is this one towards the end where Sonic learns the truth about Chip and his transformations. I love the theming of the balance of light and dark, how we can't have one without the other, and because Sonic is true to himself, he never lets the darkness control him and is instead able to control his inner beast. Speaking of said beast, what do I think of the werehog? I am very well aware that it is not well liked, for not being like Sonic. But here's the thing, I don't believe that good gameplay comes in only one form, and I can find things to appreciate in the werehog. I think that the werehog is overhated. Let me start by saying that thematically, it is very festive, as Eggman puts it. It's perfectly in line with the story, and it's nice to see both aspects take the focus. Most games put their gameplay first and then come with a story to justify it. More bonus points for the ambition of Unleashed I admire so much. And the normal werehog platforming is very unoffensive. It may at surface level look very simplistic compared to what we're used to, but when you see this game being played fast, I see the Sonic style and flair that makes Mario look plain and safe in comparison. Everything being done here can still be played for speed. A lot of people's half-hour complaints are either exaggeration or they played the game once and never went any deeper than that. And even if these nighttime stages are a bit longer than what you expect, chill out, it's nighttime. It's a different vibe that again ties in with the themes, and it's not like fast-paced action isn't present in these levels. But before I talk about the combat, I'd like to quickly mention a more recent Sonic game that I have played. It's the last game in the series that brought me back to Unleashed. Sonic Frontiers was the most recent Sonic game that felt like it had some scope, and its realistic environments with gorgeous lighting took me back to Unleashed further. But the other thing Frontiers has that makes me compare it to Unleashed is that it has combat. Now I agree that Frontiers' combat is more suitable for Sonic, but I have to say that I think Unleashed has much more satisfying combat that I can have fun with and engage with on a gameplay level. Let's ignore the fact that if we were playing as the real Sonic, then the combat would not be good. I agree with those who say that this would work better for Knuckles, but my problem with the combat of Frontiers is that it offers too much flair and too much power for too little engagement. Sonic Frontiers certainly has combat variety and a bunch of different moves, but I don't feel the need to use them outside of certain circumstances, when I can down a boss's health in seconds by spamming overpowered moves that require simple inputs. That, and you can block anything with ease. Frontiers tries to make the combat work by adding a combo system, which encourages the player to keep it increasing and makes you even more OP when you reach a certain threshold. But when I really think about it, this doesn't satisfy me because I can simply make my combo number increase with ease by holding the shoulder button. This doesn't feel as rewarding as engaging with a combo system in Sonic Unleashed's combat. Watch as I down a Titan's health in seconds by simply spamming punch and stomp. Now, a lot of people like to say that the Werehog is no God of War, and maybe I haven't played enough good games, but I'm in no rush to play God of War. To me it looks like mindless button mashing, and I'm further skeptical when the guy who created it showed zero understanding of game design when he dared to diss my beloved Metroid Dread on his infamous live stream, so maybe it's a good thing that Unleashed is no God of War.
Crap, Bush League. This should not get a pass. I'm sorry, it's crap.
What I enjoy about the Werehog is how deep the moveset is, and you'd be forgiven for doubting me right now, as the game does a poor job of teaching you how to go about unlocking that moveset. The game has an EXP system, and when first presented with the screen where you boost your stats, you are shown Sonic. Of course you are going to invest all of your points into Sonic. I certainly did on my first try. My advice, if you're going to give Unleashed another shot, is to ignore Sonic and invest points into the Werehog, specifically the combat, as much as you can. Doing so will unlock a vast array of moves that can combo into one another depending on what move was last performed or which buttons were pressed previously. Some of these moves actually help with the platforming too. I am still no expert, but I get a lot out of this combat system, thanks to the combo system tying it all together. Keeping my combo alive by strategically taking out enemies, using what moves and button combos I have memorized, trying not to break my streak or take damage, improvising with moves and unleashing my inner beast while remaining under control. And unlike Frontiers, engaging with the combat of Sonic Unleashed gets you something valuable, a good rank, and I do think that it's a lot of fun for these reasons. Another controversial aspect of this game are the inclusion of quick time events. These pop up from time to time in normal gameplay, in the daytime levels, in the Werehog combat, and even entire levels dedicated to it. Now, I could do without the tornado levels. I'd rather be playing Sonic Adventure's more interactive tornado levels here, plus the fact that my Nintendo button placement muscle memory makes me suck at these stages when playing on an Xbox, but for the rest of the game, they do not offend me that much. They pop up early on in the game's daytime levels, and if you mess them up, the punishment is virtually non-existent. You just get sent to the lower path, and because my muscle memory makes me mess them up, I'm happy to report that they can mostly be skipped during the Werehog levels. I know I always ignore the prompts myself and get more satisfaction from downing an enemy with my moves rather than pressing the right button on screen, but as the game goes on they become a bit more mandatory. Later daytime levels will have you fall into bottomless pits if you fail, and later Werehog bosses will also encourage you to engage with the quick time events. I do like the inclusion. I feel they fit with the player skill set already required to play this game well, fast reaction times and precision input. And some of my favourite moments in the game are some of the quick time events. When the Werehog is fighting the Egg Dragoon, the quick time inputs kinda simulate what we are seeing Sonic do on screen. I find it immersive. And the quick time event during the final boss that asks you to spam a button 60 times in 15 seconds, what a rush. I can't help but unleash my inner beast during this moment.
Is that it?
One last thing to touch upon that some players give Unleashed a hard time for is its difficulty. To be more specific, I'm referring not only to the notoriously difficult final level, Eggman Land, but also to the high number of Sun and Moon medals required to access the final act of the game. If you've been playing Unleashed and playing in a more exploratory manner, then you will have been collecting these medals throughout the game. A lot of the levels can't be accessed without a specific number of them, so you should be trying your best to seek them out. But no matter how much you purposefully seek them out, you'll find that to access Jungle Joyride, you still won't have enough, and will be required to replay older levels to seek out more. A lot of players will complain about having to replay older levels to progress in Sonic games, but I really don't understand this complaint. I play Sonic games so that I can replay them for better ranks and times. It's at the core of the series' DNA, so why do so many fans complain about being asked to replay levels on the same journey? For me, there is no better joy than returning to a previous level with more abilities, skills and experience under my belt and slaying it the second time, or finding a new route that leads to a well-hidden medal. Plus, Unleashed has a lot of additional bonus levels that you may have missed the last time you were in a certain continent. And some of these bonus levels can be pretty challenging, and you may already know I love a challenge, So do I have to explain why this is an element of Unleashed that I love so much? Unleashed has a pretty perfect natural difficulty curve that all culminates in one final ultimate level in Eggman Land. A gauntlet of platforming and combat that will test every single aspect of your Sonic Unleashed gameplay skills. Your first visit here might just be about an hour long, but trust me, it's not that bad when you come back to it. You even get to skip over some of the Werehog segments. All I'm gonna say is that I want Sonic games to challenge me again in the same way that Unleashed did. And I haven't 100%ed this game or anything, I'm just satisfied with how much Unleashed has to offer. I love Sonic Unleashed HD so much that I even bought an Xbox Series X just to experience it at full 60 FPS. What an incredible achievement this was to behold. The Xbox version even makes the in-game cutscenes run flawlessly too. And I'll be clear, Unleashed ain't perfect, those tornado segments are disposable, the kids' cartoon vibes are cringe, the battle music constantly interrupting the amazing nighttime music is a mood killer. This part of the final boss really sucks. A remake could iron out a lot of these problems, but do I really want this game to be remade when every other Sonic remake has had issues? A remake could move Unleashed higher up on my list, but for now, Vanilla Unleashed HD remains my second favourite 3D Sonic game of all time. Number 5. From my second favourite 3D Sonic experience to my number 1. If you've already seen my first top 10 video, then you'll already understand why I love Sonic Adventure 2 so much. But to be honest, I phoned in that entry because I couldn't really think of any new things to add to the discussion, so I talk about my history with the game and why it had such a big impact on me at the time I played it. I talk about its multiplayer and how the story is still a height that the series has barely been able to reach since. I also lightly talk about why I prefer this game over Adventure 1, and I don't really go much deeper than how I prefer this game's story and overall presentation compared to the first. Well, now things are different, as I have recently replayed Sonic Adventure 1. I played SADX with the Dreamcast Restoration mod on, and thanks to this, I have a newfound appreciation for this game. It's nowhere near as jank as I remember it being on the GameCube version that I played, and I have to thank Cybershell for making a video that points out a lot of the changes that the DX version makes to make it inferior to the Dreamcast original, so I put replaying Adventure 1 with this mod on at the back of my mind. So now I have replayed Adventure 1, what new things can I say to help explain why I still prefer the second game? Let me start by saying that Sonic the Hedgehog had a fantastic transition into 3D with the first adventure. The level designs of Sonic's stages masterfully translate the movement and rules of the 2D games into 3D. Thank you to a lot of YouTubers who have shown me really cool skips that are possible by combining the spin dash with the slope jumps. I finally understand why these levels are so beloved, and I might even agree that they are better than Adventure 2's Sonic stages. But as cool as it is to be able to do this kind of stuff, I do think it's a little scary, especially in 3D. I'm not particularly encouraged to do it, so I'm often just left to engage with the normal level design challenges. So this is why I prefer the more linear level design experience of the second game, and when most of Adventure 2's levels, gameplay interactions are this cool, stylish, dynamic and spectacular, thrilling and seamless, Adventure 1 had loads and stutters between areas. I can't help but feel more empowered and immersed. This is the difference that separates 2D Sonic from 3D Sonic to become its own thing, and I'm perfectly aware that this is a taste thing. I'm just a sucker for ridiculous, over-the-top high-speed action. Okay, so what about Knuckles' gameplay? Well, the common thing I hear other YouTubers complain about is the nerf to the Emerald Radar. They don't like how instead of reacting to all 3 shards at the same time, it only reacts to 1 at a time. I can defend this choice now. I wonder if you can relate to this. As an autistic gamer, I am very much prone to sensory overload. If my brain is receiving too much stimuli, then I will soon start to get incredibly stressed and lose my focus. Now put yourself into my shoes as I streamed Adventure 1 and this happened to me. Alright, let's find some pieces of the Master Emerald.
Sometimes found underground. Try digging for them.
Try digging for them. Alright. Okay, I'm one of those people who will defend the choice of nerfing the radar in Sonic Adventure 2 because I get sensory overload quite easily. Sonic Adventure 2 is pretty infamous for its sound mixing, but at no point in Adventure 2 does the audio get as busy as it does in Adventure 1's Knuckles stages. Oh god. The radar's already going crazy.
Alright! Now, restore the Master
God,
Emerald.
all those sound effects are still playing right now. Can we have some chill in the sound effect department, please? This is largely thanks to the radar nerf, so I thank the developers for taking this into consideration. They knew that for those who like the game and replay it, the nerf becomes a non-issue when your knowledge of the map and possible spawn locations lets you find pieces very quickly. Observant players will still be able to collect the pieces out of order if they spot them. Plus, Knuckles has unique stages built for him in the second game. Most of the alternate character stages in Adventure 1 just reuse areas from Sonic's levels. These levels are further elevated by having unique music based on the characters' personalities as well. Which brings me on to Tails. I didn't get much out of the races of Adventure 1. They were incredibly linear and easy, and again, reuse Sonic's levels. As we know, Sonic Adventure 2 decides to adapt Gamma's gameplay from the first game for Tails in the sequel. It fits with his character, being a mechanical genius equal to Eggman. It also makes him a good foil for Eggman. Gamma's gameplay was very interesting in the first game, but it was incredibly easy. The decrease in time never felt like a threat, so instead of having a timer, we're now playing for points here, trying to get the best combo of enemies and items for the best score outcome and therefore a good rank. These levels are actually a challenge too, with lots of cool secrets to be found and ways to get a lot of points. I don't recall getting many A ranks myself on these, a testament to their challenge. I don't have much to add regarding the design here. A YouTuber I very much recommend is ZoomZike, who used to make these incredibly insightful videos detailing exactly what makes the level designs of these games so fun. I hope that he continues to make this content for Sonic. So instead, I'll talk about how the ranking system is what ties everything together to give me more satisfaction with any character's gameplay in Adventure 2 versus their gameplay in Adventure 1. Adventure 1 has no ranking system, so I don't feel motivated to replay levels. Sure, it has alternate missions, but again, I don't feel motivated to play these. Adventure 2, on the other hand, encourages replays with its ranking system, and thanks to all of the changes making me want to replay these levels more, the ranking system encourages me to try harder to be better. It's that simple, really. No wonder it has been a series mainstay ever since this game. Another way in which I think 2 is better than 1 is in its boss fights. Honestly, it's shocking how pathetic and repetitive the bosses of Adventure 1 are. Quite often you're just waiting to attack, with nothing you can do to speed things up, and they go down in an equally pathetic amount of hits. The devs probably knew this and kept their hit count low as a result. I don't mind bosses where you have to wait for an opening, but it's all about what you do with that time. And I'll get onto that further when I talk about a future entry. From the very first boss of Sonic Adventure 2, you are presented with ways of getting early attacks in and downing them quicker. I'm not sure if every Sonic Adventure 2 boss follows this design philosophy, but I wonder if you might be able to educate me here. The character battles were a lot more impressive this time too, thanks to the more intelligent AI and the cinematic special moves. The Tails vs Eggman rematch and the Sonic vs Shadow fights are good examples of this. These fights are a lot more of a challenge too, and you know I like a challenge. One last thing, which I also touched upon last time, is having a preference for being immediately taken from cutscene to gameplay without any interruptions in the main campaign. Now I have no objections to hub worlds. Unleashed has one, but I never felt lost in that game. When I replayed Adventure 1, I felt lost at times, not being entirely sure where to go and feeling tricked by the train announcements led me to dead ends. The lack of consistency with these announcements led to some frustration that could have been avoided. The Tikal glowing light hint orbs are a bit of a band-aid to bad design if you ask me. And that's all I can think of to bring to the argument. I'll reiterate what I said last time when I talked about this game. I don't mean to start a flame war between fans of Adventure 1 and 2. I genuinely love the first game, more than ever thanks to the other Sonic fans who also show their appreciation of it. I think you are perfectly valid to prefer one over the other for your own reasons, and I can see your side of the argument. SA1 just doesn't make my own personal top 10, is all. I hope you understand. I just don't understand why some fans think that Adventure 2 is overrated. I think SA2 gets a lot of undeserved flack, as does SA1 to be fair, so let's end this shorter segment on a thematically appropriate song from this game's amazing OST. A little bit of padding here and there does no harm, and it's a good excuse to do this editing trick again. Number 4. What if all the high-speed thrills that I enjoy about my favourite 3D Sonic games could be translated into a 2D game? Then we get Sonic Rush. This is actually where Unleashed's boost gameplay originates from, and boy is Sonic Rush such a special game to me. It arrived at the peak of my enjoyment of being a Nintendo Sonic fan, who loved a lot of the GameCube and Game Boy Advance releases the series had to offer. When I inherited my mother's Nintendo DS, I could finally pick up the sleekest looking box art I had seen for any Nintendo DS game. This box art just oozes style, and who is this purple cat? And wow, 92% from the Nintendo official magazine on the box. The best 2D Sonic game ever. Of course I was excited to scoop this up, and what I experienced absolutely blew me away. I love Sonic games that ooze their own unique style from the moment they load. Sonic's gameplay is an evolution of the formula Dimps experimented with in Sonic Advance 2, except this time, you can control your boost and rocket to high speeds at any time. But the boost doesn't come out of nowhere, you earn boost by filling a gauge that increases with every trick you perform in the air. An evolution of the aerial tricks introduced in Advance 2, now you can perform tricks by pressing the B button for standard tricks. The more you are able to perform, the more points you will get and the more your boost gauge will fill. Tricks can be finished either with the A button or with an aerial trick using the R button, which will close the combo with a massive points bonus. I love how the animal friends will appear on screen too. You can even fill the boost meter when grinding. Very cool. This boost meter changes the 2D Sonic experience to a thrilling high speed and expressive gameplay style that I have a lot of fun with, and would go on to be adapted for mainline Sonic. This game even has a ranking system, and introduced the S rank to the series. To get one, you must master at least some aspect of the game. Meeting the target for an S rank will require good rings, trick, time, and overall speed bonus, and I love playing Sonic games for score. Adding to this game's flair is the soundtrack composed by Hideki Naganuma. I had never experienced this artist's sound before, and I was pretty swept away. I don't really need to gush over this soundtrack too much. A lot of fans love this one, and for good reason. My personal favourites are Back to Back for Water Palace, Metal Scratching for the boss theme, the Blazy mix of What You Need, and Bomba Barbara and Wrapped in Black for the final bosses. I'll save the one thing I have to say about the music in a short while, because now I want to touch upon this story, and you'd be forgiven for thinking that it doesn't have much of one if you've only played Sonic's. What we get is a pretty standard fair adventure about the end of the world and stopping Eggman. Oh, and meeting Blaze the cat. I love what few fully animated in-game cutscenes we get. The one where Blaze is introduced is pretty badass, and I instantly wanted to know more about this character, so I played through Sonic's story to find that she very much plays a similar role to Knuckles in Sonic and Knuckles' story. We even get to fight her in one of the best character battles in the series. Her story can be unlocked straight after meeting her in Sonic's, but I played it after fully taking in Sonic's, and I advise that you do too, because what we get here is pretty packed and special. Her gameplay is very similar to Sonic's, except she is a little slower, but she excels in the air, being able to outspeed Sonic with her aerial tricks and hover over large distances, and she experiences the main levels in a different order, which is a cool way of shaking it up for a second playthrough. Music for her levels is also remixed. Instead of giving us Act 1 and 2 remixes, instead Rush uses the same tracks for both acts, but provides remixes for Blaze's campaign. This is a cool touch, but I do prefer the traditional Act 1 and 2 structure. Her story goes even deeper than Sonic's as we learn more about who Blaze is, where she is from, and what is actually going on with the two Eggmen and the clash of dimensions. Blaze has a very interesting backstory. She is very similar to Knuckles in that she is the guardian of her dimension's soul emeralds, and has had a very lonely and isolated life full of responsibility. In fact, this game feels very much like Sonic and Knuckles, and I wouldn't have minded if this game was called Sonic and Blaze. She is also a princess, which, given her abilities, makes her a very interesting spin on the idea of a princess that I grew up with. She is pretty badass, and can easily keep up with Sonic. She is one of my favourite characters in the series. You may know that I relate a lot to Knuckles, so naturally I felt very attached to Blaze as well. Blaze ends up going on an odd couple adventure with the adorable Cream the Rabbit, and ends up learning about the power of friendship and opening yourself up to others. I love her backstory, and have always gotten the feeling that despite being a counterpart to Knuckles, she somehow feels like a counterpart to Sonic too. But it's a little more complicated, because in the English story that I got, nowhere is it said or implied that what I feel is the case, yet somehow I come away from Sonic Rush feeling like Sonic and Blaze are soulmates, or kindred spirits, a potential shipping. And I really miss this part of the Sonic stories. Some of my favourite character interactions from Adventure 2 are the ones between Knuckles and Rouge, and maybe I'm just a hopeless romantic and a lonely heart, or maybe I'm just straight up weird.
I'm a 32-year-old IT man who works in the basement.
Yes, I do the whole Lonely Hearts thing.
But I miss being able to ship characters based on their interactions and personalities. When we can come away from a game meant for kids, feeling like we can talk about the romantic chemistry of characters, not only makes these characters more believable, but adds some maturity to the series too. But nothing stated in the English version of the plot suggests Sonic and Blaze to have romantic chemistry, so why do I feel this way? I don't really know if I can explain it. I'll start by saying that outside of this game, I'm pretty sure that Blaze might fancy Sonic just a little bit after the events of this game. After all, she can usually be seen blushing around him, and if I would put myself in her shoes, I think this might only just be natural. You know, she had always considered her abilities a curse, and had been alone her whole life. She's probably never met anybody who can challenge her. Look at how she easily deals with Knuckles. Then she meets Sonic. At first she wants nothing to do with him and tries to handle everything herself. But when Sonic actually proves himself to be a worthy rival, she learns new life lessons and finally opens up. Sonic had a big impact on her development, as he tends to do as a paradigm character. So yeah, I'd fall for a guy like that too. So to me, all the blushing outside of this game says to me that she fancies him, but tries to keep it a secret. But that's just the theory. And let's go back to one of my favourite moments in the game, the boss fight between Sonic and Blaze. Not only are these the best character battles ever, but is where I feel the most tension in the game. It might have something to do with the difficulty. It might have something to do with the implied dance between the two characters, as Blaze literally dances in her animations. But the biggest thing that implies there is something more between Sonic and Blaze is the music. Listen to this. Do I really want to learn about the music theory of Sonic Rush? Naganuma certainly is no stranger to the concept of love. And look at this when I Google Vela Nova meaning. You are certainly not alone, my friend. All Sonic and Blaze shippers, sound off below. And the scene at the end where they say goodbye has always been an emotional one to me. Again, nowhere is it stated that any romantic chemistry exists, but the framing and the staging and the visuals all suggest to me that Sonic and Blaze are destined soulmates, kindred spirits who should be together. A Romeo and Juliet situation where they can't be together, because if their worlds intertwine for too long, disaster will ensue. I really wonder what the dialogue is like in the Japanese version. It would be nice to see a more faithful translation if the Japanese script actually plays about with this concept. That's all I'm going to say regarding that. Let's jump back into the actual gameplay and see what I can say here. I'm sure most of you know the deal here and why this game is also so beloved. It ticks a lot of boxes, with little blemishes here and there. Sonic Rush isn't my favourite game in the Rush series. It falls a little short because of the abundance of bottomless pits and crushing hazards that made Sonic Advance 3 such a chore. But it's nowhere near that bad thanks to the dual screen setup, allowing you to see more. The level design is mostly great, though I could do without these arenas that force you to defeat a certain number of enemies before proceeding. And Dimps finally realised that Sonic 3 offered the best way to enter special stages, with multiple entries per level. These are also the best use of a touchscreen for a special stage. They remain to be among my favourite in the series. Sonic Rush receives the most criticism in its boss fights, but I'm a sucker for more involved boss fights and I'm ready to defend them. Let me start by saying that it's technically impressive to behold these 3D fights on actual hardware. Such scale at a silky smooth 60 FPS on the Nintendo DS. Now these are indeed bosses that you gotta wait for an opening before you can get hit. But like I said when talking about the same thing in Sonic Adventure, it's what you do with the waiting time that really matters. And Sonic Rush gets this so right. To S-rank a boss, you'll have to take it out as quickly as possible with all of your rings to net the required points bonus, and the bosses of Sonic Rush aren't content on letting that happen. You will have to skillfully recognise and avoid attack patterns if you want a chance of getting an S-rank. Bosses will try their best to hurt you, or even insta-kill you if you aren't careful. And here's where some subtle gameplay dynamics come in to really ramp up these boss fights. The ring loss system in Rush is incredibly interesting. If you lose a bunch of rings and recollect any of those scattered rings, then for every subsequent scatter from those recollected rings, the rings will bounce further and further away until you can no longer recollect them. This is a fantastic addition that adds a layer of strategy to a fight. Will I collect every available ring for the S rank and try to keep them all? Or am I not good enough to avoid taking a hit, so I'll save some rings for when I lose my current set? The other thing that makes this system a satisfying one for me is the fact that most of the bosses are programmed to keep attacking you for another cycle if you got hit in the previous one, meaning that you'll have to wait even longer for your next chance to hit. These bosses want you to take them out without taking a hit. Some of these bosses also incrementally get harder and harder as you lessen their HP, like in Advance 1, and even have a pinch mode like in Advance 2, complete with an Allegro remix. So yeah, these bosses can take longer than the classics, but I for one am glad they are. I love a lot of Dimps boss fights. I'm not too upset that one of them is a reskin, but that's just another blemish that makes the first rush lesser than its sequel. I know I've missed a few things here and there, but this video is getting longer than I had anticipated, and there's not much more I can add to the discussion. Sonic Rush, despite some flaws, is indeed one of the best Sonic games ever, and it's number 4 on this list. Number 3. Sonic CD is a strange game that I've always had this on and off relationship with. I first got a taste of it during the early days of emulation, albeit without any music, and with the choppy frame rate of the Sega CD original combined with what emulation was like back in my younger years, I was not impressed. So it would take many years for me to experience it in a truly playable form. When I had my GameCube and one holiday season, I decided to pick up the recently released Sonic Gems collection, so I could replay Sonic R on my own console and experience the other two headliners that I had never properly experienced. I had a friend at school who sometimes liked to talk Sonic with me, and he would often hype up just how many levels Sonic CD had to offer, and my SBO loving friend wasn't wrong. Every level in this game has a variation of some kind that transforms it into a completely different vibe. This is achieved thanks to the game's time travel mechanic, using the open playground provided by the level design to find creative ways of maintaining enough speed for long enough to break the sound barrier and travel either to the past or to a good or bad future version of the same level. I can't help but love this twist, and it remains a fan favourite mechanic, popping up in several fan games such as Time Twisted and Sonic Laserdisc, and I'm going to presume that a lot of you watching are also fans who are generally in agreement regarding a lot of Sonic CD's positives. A lot of people have said a lot of things about this game, so I don't want this to become a level by level review or in-depth gameplay analysis. You know the deal and the history of it, and I would rather talk about how Sonic CD makes me feel, because for the longest time I felt conflicted regarding the game. I remember falling in absolute love with it when I played it on the Gems collection. I didn't care or notice that there was only the Spencer Nielsen soundtrack and that some of the water effects were incorrect. I was happy to have such atmospheric music to accompany me and to be able to play the game smoothly for the first time. I loved how on my first playthrough, the pace of the game was slower and more explorative. Exploring all the different time zones was incredibly rewarding and awoke a playstyle where I would use this mechanic to try and clear a zone with as many rings as possible and find the robot generator in the past to create a good future. And the soundtrack that accompanied my first playthrough was equally amazing. Keep in mind that I had played Sonic Adventure DX first on my GameCube, so when I heard the rockin' guitars used in Sonic Boom and other songs, I just figured they were laying the foundation for the sound of the Adventure era. I find this soundtrack to be incredibly atmospheric and suitable of a Metroidvania. At the time I had never played a Metroidvania, but in retrospect, and looking at how almost every level is fully backtrackable, Sonic CD is arguably the closest Sonic has ever been to a Metroidvania. My favourite tracks from the very first moment I heard them include Collision Chaos Present, because I always interpreted the opening guitar as the sound of Little Planet being in pain from Eggman's imprisonment. Tidal Tempest Present, because I've always been a sucker for female vocals and because there is something undeniably watery about this song to me. I wish I could explain it. Stardust Speedway Present, because the intro seemed to be in sync with the flashing of the spotlights in the background, and if I stay here long enough I enjoy this amazing piece that encapsulates the feeling of speeding through the nightlights. As I drifted into my own future, I would play Sonic CD less and less until it came to the point where I no longer had access to the Gems collection. I would have to await the 2011 remake to experience it again. It was nice to have a smoother version in widescreen for sure, but something about it felt a little off, especially when it came to the special stages. They feel even harder in this version of the game with their dodgy hitboxes. I couldn't put my finger on the other changes though, but now I understand that this early version of the retro engine has some issues, and I wasn't too crazy about access to the original soundtrack either. I tried it and it felt so alien and strange to me that I immediately decided to always play on the USA soundtrack instead. That one was familiar. and thanks to you guys spreading the word, I came to learn that the songs used for the pass actually come from the original soundtrack. It took me back to my initial reaction to hearing how different Collision Chaos's past music was, and how loopy the repeating section made me feel. But even with the familiarity and additions that CD11 provided me, I didn't replay it as much as I did when I was a kid. It would take me a long time to understand how I feel regarding every aspect of this game, but now I can say that I fully understand why Sonic CD makes me feel the way I do, and it's thanks largely to the Sonic community's efforts to research and passionately discuss every aspect of this game. Which brings me to the present. Sonic CD has once again become one of those games I play regularly. You can find me live streaming it, playing it in my childhood playstyle of collecting lots of rings and getting good futures, and I am now fully on board with the original soundtrack of the game too. I understand why some have said that Sonic CD is peak Sonic the Hedgehog, and I have to agree that thematically, every single aspect of Sonic CD's original intended package is indeed true to the essence of Sonic the Hedgehog in its purest form. The theme of technology versus nature is represented visually, with the environmental art portraying this theme as the game progresses. We see the natural world of Little Planet become more dystopian as the adventure continues, and we get to see how bad things can become if technology goes too far, or work hard for a positive outcome, where we see that nature and technology can coexist in harmony. The original soundtrack too perfectly encapsulates this theme. To my knowledge, all of these tracks were made using Korg synthesizers and sampling, so the fact that they fit so well with the levels they accompany is another genius way of using nature and technology for the best outcome. Again, thanks to Sonic fans who love to spread knowledge, I have come to appreciate the original soundtrack. I won't go into any specifics, but I finally understand why I would always feel so loopy in Collision Chaos past. It has become my interpretation that the original soundtrack is more of a reflection of how the characters of this game feel, whether it's how Sonic feels on his adventure, or the animals he is rescuing, or even Dr. Eggman and Metal Sonic taunting him. My favourite tracks here include all of Palm Tree Panic. The celebratory cheers used in the song always make me feel like I am being congratulated for achieving a good future on a previous run, and encourages me to try hard to achieve another one. I love the primal feel of Quartz Quadrant Past, and that piano solo is something to behold. I love how menacing all of Metallic Madness is, and how the theme is completely subverted in the good future to achieve a melody so catchy, pop musicians only wish they could capture the same feel-good slice. And the boss themes are absolute gold. Peak Sonic indeed. And that's not even to mention how this game is peak Sonic when it comes to speed. I have gotten to chat to some speedrunners of this game who feel this is the best Sonic game to speedrun. Every level is an open playground for you to experiment and achieve a fast time. The CD speedrunning scene is very much alive, and I am told that there is still tons of potential for new discoveries and freedom of expression. I'm not much of a speedrunner myself, but I look at how packed and layered these levels are and can only agree there must be so many different ways of clearing them with speed and style that haven't been discovered yet. Even the often criticised bosses, which often go down in a tiny amount of hits, start to make sense when you consider that they were designed to stay in line with the idea of speed. My game dev brain can't argue with that reasoning. I could go on and on, but I need to end this somewhere. I love Sonic CD and agree with the notion that the game represents the very core of what makes Sonic the Hedgehog so unique and special. But I have one final piece of conflict to resolve, because as I am writing now in the present, which will become the past by the time you watch this in the future, I was planning on putting this as number 2. But as I sit here and vibe with CD's OST, I realise that it doesn't make me feel the same way as I do listening to the OST of what is now my number 2. But why is that? I guess it's because there has never really been an official, perfect version of Sonic CD. 2011 didn't feel right because of some small tweaks made to physics, graphics, or other small oddities. But it does have those juicy extensions to the US music. Origins removes those extensions though, and Origins adds other things that don't sit right with me, and for some reason, I'm way more prone to running into annoying bugs in this version, so I stay away from that. The original version is choppy, the Gems collection is the PC version and lacks OST choice, yada yada, you know the score. Sonic CD Restored is a fan effort to undo a lot of the changes of the Christian Whitehead version, and make it feel more like the original Sega CD version. I appreciate the restored physics and the much better feeling special stages. It even lets you customize your own soundtrack on a level by level basis, which is pretty cool. It comes so close to being a perfect way to experience Sonic CD, but unfortunately you gotta jump through some hoops to play as Knuckles, and I always experience some screen tearing when I try to play this version of the game. As a result, I have never had a version of Sonic CD to call my own, unless it's the Gems collection version, which I also no longer wish to return to. and no matter how much I enjoy replaying this game, I always have a hard time in Wacky Workbench Act 1, so I am putting Sonic CD at number 3. Number 2. Sonic Rush Adventure was the first Sonic game I ever bought at launch. It arrived deep into my days of being a subscriber of the official Nintendo magazine. They gave this game a rather glowing review back in 2007. A genuinely huge game, proper old school Sonic action and inventive and massive boss fights, and the negatives, we'll get into those. Still, 92% is a respectable score. It should be noted that as far as I know, the 92% on the box of the first Sonic Rush is from a completely different magazine. I was hyped. I went to what was known as the Metro Centre, a massive shopping complex in the northeast of England, to grab my copy. I couldn't wait to start it up, so I sat in a McDonald's with my DS, booted up the game, saw the intro cutscene, and immediately turned it on. I could tell this was going to be something special, so I left it till I got home so I could properly immerse myself and play it. I went on to fall completely in love with this game. It became my most played DS game ever. This is an incredible sequel to Sonic Rush and is fitting of the subtitle Adventure. Sonic Rush Adventure truly builds upon its predecessor in every way possible while adding new things to make this feel like a meaty and mainline adventure, playable in the palm of your hands. I loved the first game's 3D cutscenes, and this game adds more, some of them with subtitles. These cutscenes add to the overall production value. If you like the first game's story and lore, then this game provides more to chew on. I genuinely enjoy the story and the little touches made to make them a little more dynamic, similar to what Ace Attorney does. In this game's story, after being sucked into a vortex, we find ourselves to be in the Soul Dimension this time. We are once again reunited with Blaze the Cat, a third into the story, and we get to learn even more about her world and backstory. We also get to meet a fair number of new characters. This game received a lot of criticism at the time, because critics came to associate Sonic games that added new characters as bad ones. This is such a dumb complaint though. We're in a brand new and uncharted world for Sonic and Tails. Who were they expecting to meet? Anyway, a lot of these characters are just random townsfolk and NPCs who help make this world feel more alive. The major new characters relevant to the plot this time include Marine, the Raccoon, Captain Whisker and Johnny, the Torpedo. I quite like these new characters, especially Marine, but I'll start with the main antagonists, Whisker and Johnny. Now, I knew all along that these guys were going to be Eggman creations, so I was just waiting for that reveal on my first playthrough, and these single game characters would soon disappear into obscurity. But what makes Captain Whisker so memorable after my most recent replay of the game is his dialogue. All of it is written like how we'd imagine a pirate speaking. I can tell that the localizers had a lot of fun with the dialogue of this game. I remember it super helping with bringing these characters to life in my head when I first played it, and it made it super fun to read out loud during my live stream of it. Can we get more Sonic characters who have regional accents, please? And he's a surprisingly funny character too. Why is he so forgetful? Johnny, on the other hand, isn't as memorable for me. He only pops up a couple of times in the plot if you seek out the Chaos Emeralds, and then towards the end to reveal that he's working with Whisker. He's a decent enough robot rival for Sonic in this game. He has a cool design and the races against him for the Chaos Emeralds can get pretty challenging. Otherwise, he just isn't fleshed out enough for him to be memorable. The most fleshed out character in this game's story is Marine the Raccoon. She was the recipient of a lot of negativity back in the day. I think a lot of fans simply find her annoying. And that's ironic, because that's the point of a character. She's a rambunctious young girl full of energy and curiosity, and a constant thorn in Sonic and Blaze's side along their adventure, constantly getting them into danger because of her acting irresponsibly and immaturely. Sonic and Tails keep going easy on her, but Blaze, on the other hand, who is used to keeping feelings bottled up, gets so frustrated until she can't contain it anymore and ends up lashing out at her. This moment triggers the start of Marine's character arc. And her arc is a good one we can all relate to, right? We've all been excitable kids before. I'd even go so far to say that Marine might have ADHD. Marine proves herself to be a mechanical genius with the potential to be on par with Tails, and by the end of the game, she learns how to think before acting and starts to become more mature. She's even the reason why things work out in the end, acting as a Deus Ex Machina for the final cutscene and the saviour of the Jeweled Scepter, which is this game's MacGuffin of the week. Some fans speculate that she may even have elemental water powers. That would be interesting indeed. But my absolute favourite thing about Marine is the way she is written. Again, I can tell the localizers had a ton of fun with her as they decided to give her an Australian accent. complete with the typical slang that Australians would use. So the 16-year-old me who had grown up with the legendary Crocodile Hunter and other Australian imports had a blast bringing her character to life. I didn't even need the slang words defining. She was a blast to voice act during my live stream too. I miss her very much, and it's a shame that she has never been seen again since. I've spoken a lot about the story already, and hopefully that should be the longest segment. The story is partly what makes this game worthy of the adventure suffix, and exceeds the first game by quite the distance, for Rush Adventure has an ocean's worth of content to enjoy. The main levels improve upon the first game by offering much better and fairer level design, with none of the forced pace break and slow moments of the first game. The difficulty curve is more natural and progressive. There are also an additional 21 mini levels to seek out if you wish for more than just the base 7 zones of the main campaign. The first game had moments of 3D gameplay scattered here and there, and this game adds even more, with cool little gameplay twists that feel like they're laying the foundation for Unleashed, which would release a year later. These levels feature music going back to the traditional Act 1 and 2 remix structure I prefer too, and the OST is this time composed by now series veteran Tomoya Otani, and this was his second Sonic OST as sound director. The soundtrack still retains the sample style of the first game, and even reuses some of Rush 1's samples, but Otani brings a grander, more orchestral feel to this overall soundtrack, with a lot more variation than the first game in my opinion, from the tropical vibes of the main theme and the village music, to the music used for the cutscenes. Otani is flexing what can be done with the DS and provides an OST worthy of a grand adventure across the open seas. If I were to list all of my favourite tracks here, I think I would most likely just end up listening every single song, so let's move on. Another way in which this game builds upon its predecessor is by offering a hub world that has more purpose. Southern Ireland is a pretty small hub world and contains easy access to everything you need for your adventure. But this isn't really the hub world. To progress in this game, you must actually cruise across the open seas. As the game goes on, you will unlock various seafaring vehicles that let you explore the open ocean, in a way not too different to what the player does in Zelda, The Wind Waker. This is how Rush Adventure uses the touchscreen and pads out the game. At first you will only have a water ski with limited range, but as you progress, you'll unlock a hovercraft, a battleship, and a submarine, all with their pros and cons. You'll have to experiment with each one and use them to reach suspicious spots on your world map. My personal favourites are the water ski and the hovercraft, as they are very much similar control-wise. I'm not too crazy about the others, but it's cool how the submarine minigame is a rhythm game, and I do like how much destruction you can unleash with the battleship's arsenal. This is my favourite hub world ever in a Sonic game, and really makes the game feel like a mainline adventure. I love how much bonus content there is hidden away, but some people criticise how you're going to have to replay old levels for the materials required to craft and upgrade these vehicles. I said it during Unleashed and I'll say it again. Why do Sonic fans complain about replaying levels in a series all about encouraging replayers to learn how to get better at them? I truly don't understand. And when the levels I'm replaying are this good, with the option to choose Sonic or Blaze, I personally have nothing to complain about. Blaze even sees some small improvements too. She is now immune to fire hazards, and they nerfed her hover, as in the first game you could spam and feather the hover button to massively reduce the rate of your descent, which was certainly an oversight that made Blaze a little overpowered. Luckily, the level design still keeps her moveset in mind and offers her amazing shortcuts that Sonic can't reach, and her boss missions required to collect the Soul Emeralds offer a harder rematch that takes me back to Knuckles' harder boss fights of Sonic and Knuckles. And let's talk about the bosses. These are by far and away the most improved thing about the game. I understand that waiting for a single attack opportunity isn't everybody's cup of tea, and so did the developers, as now you can spend the waiting time getting more hits in. Instead of having 8 HP, these massive bosses have health bars, and bring Sonic combat that much more closer to what I enjoy about games like Monster Hunter and Dark Souls. And if you're skilled, you can whittle down these health bars by maintaining a bounce combo on the boss's weak spots for as long as possible. Some bosses deviate from this too, like the Pendulum boss, which tests the player's ability to create speed and momentum, with a fight against a massive dinosaur, a sword-wielding pirate, and a double boss battle against Whisker and Johnny. These bosses could be considered the Dark Souls of Sonic. If we're going to get another game like Sonic Frontiers, then I want the developers at DIMS to be the ones to tackle the bosses. So I hope to have explained why I believe Sonic Rush Adventure to be better than the first game in every single way. Thinking about how much I love this game and vibing with its OST fills me with such nostalgia and gets me feeling pretty emotional. One of my favourite songs in the entire game is the credits music. It starts playing as we are about to return to our own world and say goodbye to Marine in a heartfelt scene that feels very bittersweet in retrospect. She has grown a little and is ready to start going on her own adventures. She tells us that she will miss us, but Sonic and Tails promise that we'll see her again one day. But that never happened. Sonic Rush Adventure might have reviewed well in my circles, but it didn't sell well at all, and is probably why we never got a third Sonic Rush game. And I said the real Sonic Rush 3, before some of you jump in with the opinion that Colors DS is Rush 3. It really upsets me that this series never went anywhere, even though it felt like it was leading to something more. To this day, I still want to know more about the Sol Dimension, the Sol Emeralds, the connection between Sonic and Blaze, and what the deal is with Eggman and Eggman Nega, the latter of whom I have barely touched upon. But I assure you, Eggman and his counterpart come across feeling incredibly menacing, and I always got the feeling that Nega was hiding a very dark secret. Something about him made him seem even more unhinged and evil than our Eggman. It upsets me that the reception to Marine was so negative that her journey was never continued, and it upsets me that after this game, Dimps went on to become so mishandled by Sega. They became the studio that made downgraded versions of the mainline games, and had less creativity than ever before during the nostalgia pandering era of Sonic. Their reputation further soured by both episodes of Sonic 4 before the horrible 3DS version of Sonic Lost World became their last ever Sonic game. I do not blame them for the choices that most likely came from Sega management. Dimps have left behind an incredible legacy and golden age of creativity that started with Pocket Adventure and ended with Rush Adventure. Colors DS is fun, but I'm sorry, it's not Rush 3. If it's not too much to ask, Sonic Team, can we finally get a continuation of the Sonic Rush saga? Can we explore the Sol Dimension's connection to Sonic's world again? Can we see the real Sonic and Blaze together again? Can we see Marine the Raccoon again and maybe play as her? Can we learn more about Eggman Nega and his true motives? And can we see this gameplay style return again? Actually, can we see all of the Dimps handheld games re-released, please? Until I see a Rush 3, Rush Adventure will remain my second favourite Sonic game of all time. Number 1. Well, here we are. This should be no surprise to those of you who have seen the last top 10, so this time I'm cutting to the chase. Sonic the Hedgehog 3 and Knuckles is not only my favourite Sonic game of all time, but it also beats every other game I have played to remain my favourite of them all. Period. And in that last video, I pretty much exclusively talked about how I admire the execution of the story and how I relate so much to Knuckles that he became my favourite character in the series. Then I went off on a tangent about how the Sonic fan communities of YouTube inspire me. And this is because, I'll be honest, it's really scary sitting down to write about something I love so much, and what particularly makes me freeze like a deer in the headlights is the idea of trying to come up with something unique that hasn't already been said by the fans who have had such an impact on me. So what I'm gonna do is channel my inner geek critique and go over some more of my personal history with the game, while expanding upon the idea of thanking the fans who have deepened my connection to this game. I have tried to mention a related fan project or influential channel in each segment throughout this script, and this is what it's been building to. So I'll quickly reiterate that my first proper playthrough of the full fat Sonic 3 and Knuckles was via the PC collection. You know, the one with the awful MIDI songs and replaced music that we all initially thought was made exclusively for the PC version to get around the Michael Jackson copyright issues. And back when we thought that Michael Jackson was the true composer for all of these songs too, I was obsessed with this idea, and I remember watching Q Jimbo's video on the subject many times. And even though a lot of those songs sounded awful on my PC, the Launch Bass Act 2 music actually sounded amazing, and it's always been a favourite. It absolutely blew my mind when that Sonic 3 beta was finally uncovered a few years back by Hidden Palace. We found out that those songs were actually originally intended for the game, and we learned so many cool pieces of lost development history. When I was at school, I would spend so much time researching and visiting sites like hiddenpalace.org and Sonic Retro to learn stuff about the cut content of Sonic games. I don't know why it satisfies me so much to see stuff that never was, a possible alternate history, but it's thanks to fans like that who help keep my attachment to these games so alive. Seeing Beta Sonic 3 was such a special discovery for me, and I hope that the fanbase continues to research and uncover other long-lost prototypes. Imagine if we finally get to see a beta of Sonic 1, man. Anyway, I was thankful for the Sonic & Knuckles collection on my PC. It gave me quick and easy access to the game, because I could take that CD with me and play it on any PC I came across. I even used it to take screenshots, and I made these Sonic trading cards when I was still at school. I still have them to this day and keep them in a tin, and having that collection encouraged me to actually start collecting the original games for the Mega Drive. And I was a pretty wealthy kid, let me tell you. I was my local neighborhood's top paperboy. Getting up at 5 AM and doing the majority of the deliveries for 3 to 5 hours was totally worth it when I could spend my hard-earned savings on real hardware from stores like GameStation, Chips, and Granger Games. All of these stores are now defunct, unfortunately. But I even had a Sega Nomad. I bought it one Christmas for 200 quid, using the very generous tips typical of the festive period, and amazingly, my UK cartridges ran just fine on it, mostly. I could fully immerse myself into this game in the way only handheld consoles can offer. And not to mention the amazing Mega Collection on the GameCube that also gave me instant access to the game. It's safe to say I was pretty spoilt for choice on ways to officially play Sonic 3 and Knuckles for the longest time. But there came a time in my life where I had to start again from scratch, and my ways of enjoying this game became incredibly limited, partly thanks to Sega's reluctance to re-release the game. We had gotten mobile remasters of Sonic 1 and 2, and I thought it was only a matter of time till my favourite game ever got the same treatment, but as you know, that didn't come to pass, at least for an incredibly long time. I was incredibly lucky to have a modded Wii and a cheap laptop computer though, so for the longest time, the fan-made hack Sonic 3 Complete was my go-to way to play the game. I was made aware of it thanks to always following the hacking scene since I discovered its existence in the early days of the internet. Sonic 3 Complete offers a lot of bug fixes and some cool options to let you customize your experience. I obviously would play the complete package, put Flying Battery after Carnival Night Zone so we got the intended level order and snowboard explanation, change Mushroom Hill to Mushroom Valley, and also have the beta tracks play for Act 2 of Carnival Night, Ice Cap and Launch Base for extra nostalgia. Thank you to everybody who contributed towards this project. I recognise a lot of influential names here. When I got the very laptop that I used to start this channel, I was also excited to try the recently released Sonic 3 Angel Island Revisited, or AIR for short. I can't quite remember the exact history of this project. Perhaps you could help me here, as this mod has become so popular and widespread that almost every site hosts it now. I think it was a Sonic Amateur Games Expo debut, as I keep it in the same folders that all the other Sage games go. I could be wrong though, as this is actually more of a mod, I think. I don't quite know how this works, but because I have Sonic 3 on Steam before Sega decided to delist it, when I open the app, it just works. As if by magic, Sonic 3 and Knuckles is playable smoothly with a widescreen resolution with all kinds of cool customizations, though I have always lamented how this version doesn't let us play Flying Battery in the intended order in its base form. It even works natively with my Nintendo Switch Pro controller, without the need for third-party add-ons, which I don't really like to rely on. I hope more fan projects decide to natively support the Switch controller too, as I think it is the most comfortable modern controller, and I don't want to have to buy an Xbox controller just to use it for an odd game every now and then. And to this day, Sonic 3 Air remains my definitive way to play my favourite game of all time, even now that we finally have that remaster. Thank you to everybody who worked on this project too. And about the Sonic Origins version of Sonic 3 and Knuckles, it was too little too late. Nearly a whole decade had passed since the mobile remake of Sonic 2 had dropped. The fans were not only hoping these versions would make their way to console, but Sonic 3 would also get the same treatment. And when Sega finally pulled the reveal out of their arse, I was not impressed, and I do not need to explain why using words. I knew I was never going to buy Origins, and in retrospect, now that I have recently bought a heavily discounted Origins Plus, I'm so glad that I didn't. An official re-release from a safe corporation will never live up to the love and passion put in by the fans. And I'm not saying that love and passion didn't go into this game. I appreciate some of the changes made after all, but boy, as we all know straight from the horse's mouth, something went horribly wrong during development. The tiny little changes that the contemporary player will not notice, but as somebody who has played the hell out of the original versions, throw me off so much. Enemies spawning differently, different physics, fixing things that I didn't consider bugs but features, the Phantom Cool bonus, they all twist and warp my favourite game into an unpolished product not worthy of the moniker of greatest video game of all time. It breaks my heart, especially hearing what little effort Jun Senue put into remaking the beta tracks, because we all knew Sega were not going to pay for Brad Buxer and the Michael Jackson estate. This man, who I have met in person and had the power to make me faint with his live music, could have done so much better. I cannot play Origin Sonic 3, and this is the biggest reason of all of them. I loved those beta tracks so much, and again, the fans have done so much better because they use their love and passion to drive their creativity. I hope the paycheck was worth it, Jun. But, with that said, I do want to express my gratitude towards Christian, Whitehead and Stealth. I have been following their careers since the early days of the hacking and fangaming scene. I think you guys are incredibly talented, and your love of Sonic shines through your entire CV. I truly believe that you were capable of topping Sonic 3 and Knuckles if you were given the chance. Thank you for Sonic Mania, and thank you to all the other talented people at Evening Star who contributed towards this project. I was incredibly confident that Mania would be something special from the moment I got to play the demo at the Summer of Sonic 2016. The Summer of Sonic was an annual convention hosted in London by the fan website Sonic Stadium. I was incredibly lucky to have gotten to go to the last ever one by backing their Kickstarter campaign. I would love to make a standalone video about this once in a lifetime experience, as it was one of the best days of my life and the first time I truly felt like I had found my community. Thank you to the Sonic Stadium for providing a place to go talk about Sonic and keep up with the news. This site has been a part of my life since the mid-2000s. That was a bit of a tangent, so let's try to bring this back around to Sonic 3 and Knuckles and end the segment. My favourite game of all time was always my go-to Sonic game. I'd probably play it between 2 and 4 times a year, and I knew from the moment I started a YouTube channel that I'd want to talk about it. But it has taken me so long to understand why I love this game so much. And this is where you come in. My thoughts about this game have been forged by the collective opinions and shared experience of those of you who have taken the time to talk about this game as well. My favourite thing about poetry is that there is no such thing as a right or wrong interpretation, so long as you can support that with evidence. You are all poets, and what you do is art. So what more can I say? Well, one last bit, because there was a time not too distant ago where I was just going through the motions with not just this game, but gaming in general. I had spent a lot of time optimising the fun out of the games I played that I had forgotten how to interact with them on a deeper level. You know, playing Sonic games with a more curious and playful nature like I did when I was younger with CD and Advance, and interacting with the level design using the deeper mechanics that exist within the open playgrounds laid out by the developers. I was going through the motions. I felt incredibly meh about games, not just games, but Sonic 3 as well. That was until I watched this video called "You Have Only Experienced 25% of Sonic 3. This video grabbed my attention right away with its playfully cheeky tone. It does a very good job of showing how Sonic 3, which I had often considered one of the more linear Sonic games, actually has so much room for the player freedom and expression that is core to the gameplay of the very best Sonic the Hedgehog games. I had never considered playing Sonic 3 using the inbuilt difficulty options provided, and this video had reinvigorated my love of Sonic, and I feel that now I truly understand the design language of 2D Sonic. I love to do my whole spin on the whole playing for score shtick, and let me tell you, there is no greater feeling of making it through a stage without taking a single hit and losing my rings, especially when Flying Battery Act 1's mini-boss provides the perfect test of what has always been Sonic's best parry, the Insta-Shield. I-framing through those balls is my favourite thrill in the game. My heart is in my throat every single time. And I had never even considered leaving the ghosts on in Sandopolis Act 2. That is another way of spicing up your experience if you fancy more of a challenge.
That's a spicy meatball!
I'd love to play a mod of Sonic 3 Air that has these ghosts appear in every level. So thank you to Alex Yard, whose other work has also been very helpful for helping me understand why the music of this series is top tier too. I have gotten to connect with so many cool Sonic fans over the last year, and it's mostly thanks to welcoming me into your community. I need to stop myself somewhere now because, you know, I could just go on and talk Sonic with you guys all day, but I have other things to attend to for now. That's one of the reasons that there are no honourable mentions this time. I have so many more games I would like to talk about, and thankfully I have plenty of time to make that happen. If I look back at this top 10 now and try to come to any meaningful conclusions, then I notice one very glaring thing. There is not a single entry on this list that comes from the meta era of Sonic, and even if I included 5 honourable mentions, I still think every title mentioned would have released prior to 2010. I could explain to you why this is the case, but I'll leave that one up to interpretation. The other common theme is that I really respect the titles that were co-developed by Dimps. As I make the finishing touches to this video, Sonic Team said that they are open for more fan requested remasters, so I'm going to reiterate how much it would make me happy to see Dimps' legacy respected and preserved. I want to thank you for making it to the end of this video. I very much consider this video a sequel to my last top 10. If you enjoyed this one and you're new here, I'd love for you to check that one out as well. They've been written so that you can watch them in any order anyway. I enjoy making these kinds of personal retrospectives, and I equally enjoy listening to others do the same. Thank you again, YouTube, for inspiring me. I also thank my good friends and this channel's founding patrons, Knucklehead and J. Artorius, for supporting this channel directly. And a special shout out to other members of my Discord community who help keep everything in my life balanced, and are always up for talking not just Sonic, but anything. If you would like to network with other cool fans, play games together and talk Sonic, and you would like to see more videos like this, then I hope you may consider joining my Discord server via support on Patreon. I offer a lot of behind the scenes stuff, and you can have your say on the future of this channel, and review the script writing process. If not, but you'd still like to see more videos like this, then you know the score. A like, comment or subscription still means the world to me. Thank you, take care, and I'll see you later.